About 2:30 in the morning, we heard we were reaching along with a reef and a jib and a gentle staysail, doing between 14 and 17 knots. Close reaching, boat felt in good shape, and then we heard a loud bang, and Chuck Clay, who was driving, said that he lost steering. We worried first initially that we were going to go into a crash jibe, and we were preparing for that. And then we realized very quickly that we had no steering whatsoever, and B, that we were taking on water pretty quickly. I've had the privilege of sailing with the Disneys for probably 30 years. I sailed with Roy and his father in 1987, and we on OEX are extremely grateful for the entire efforts of Roy and the Pyewacket crew, the United States Coast Guard. Roy, I'm really sorry we ruined your race, and I'm sincerely grateful.
Well, I appreciate that.
Ryan and Eric Berzins were in the back. Ryan Braemar and Eric Berzins were in the back of the boat. We took the quadrant off of the. They took the quadrant off the rudder post, and it appeared that the entire lower rudder bearing had blown off the boat, and the rudder was can opening the bottom of the boat. Ryan sat on top of a bucket to try to stop the water intrusion, and was blown off as if it was a geyser. We were Chuck Clay and Randy Smith and Greg Wigger were tossing buckets of water up to me on deck, while Matt Bryant was getting rafts ready to go. Brendan Bush did a great job on the radios, got through to both the Coast Guard and thankfully Pyewacket, and I believe Bolt heard our distress call as well. We were within a few miles of each other, and Pyewacket diverted.
I was just waking up, and you could just hear, the radio's on all the time, but you could just hear something urgent in the sound of the voice, and then we heard the words OEX, and Benny and I looked at each other and said, what the heck's going on? So we leaned in and listened to that. Then the next part was figuring out where we were relative to them. We'd seen them far south of us earlier in the day, and we assumed that other boats were closer than we were. And then our navigator came up and said, they're right in front of us. So it was actually pretty easy to just turn a little bit left, and we were right on top of them pretty quickly. It was blowing 15 or 16 or so, and we were going along doing 14, 15 knots, all powered up. So slowing down was not that easy, but then we came upon the eerie sight of a mainsail up on a boat that was, going under the waves. It's a pretty tragic thing to see. And these two lifeboats tied together with flashing lights on them would be too dangerous to put rigs next to other rigs in a rolling sea to try to rescue people.
When I saw Pyewacket's running lights, and we were 4 or 5 feet of water inside of the boat, and I was sitting on our aft cockpit, up to 8 inches of water in my around me, I said, "Okay, boys, it's time to go." I feared we have a watertight bulkhead in the bow, and I thought the boat would go down by the stern and the mast would land on top of our rafts, and I just said, "Well, we've got to get going," and felt really confident that Roy and his remarkable crew were going to look after us once we got into the boats.
Which we did. We had ribs and wine on the way in.
And tuna and fellowship.
All 19 of us.
Yeah, and they were more than gracious hosts.
Just want to add that I have a group of guys who are very good at what they do, and I appreciate that. And John has a group of guys who are also very good at what they do, and there was no panic, there was no distress, other than guys getting into a lifeboat in the dark in the middle of the night in the middle of the Pacific. But everybody handled it perfectly, and it's a tribute to sailors in general and our groups that it worked out the way it did. Yeah, the other thing to point out is that rule number 1 in the race handbook is save lives. There were no other choices for us. It was the obvious thing to do, and I don't think any of us could have lived with ourselves if we'd sailed on. But no, we did the things we had to do.